Welcome to the Fundamentals of Digital Forensics for Beginners. We live in a digital age where not only urban but rural citizens also rely on technology for everyday tasks, be it banking, shopping, or communication via email, etc. As a result, cybercrime is on the rise. And there was a demand by my students of cybersecurity course and Cyber Pathshala India YouTube channel's audience as well for this very basic, customized, but crisp and short course on basics of digital forensics. Reason is cybercrime is increasing day by day, and at times it is difficult to solve the case even for the police or to put the victim behind bars due to lack of evidence. This course will equip you so that you can identify potential sources of the digital evidence. Topics I have covered in this crisp digital forensics course are fundamentals of digital forensics, cybercrime types and case studies. Why I have covered cybercrime and types? Because until unless one is not aware about the cybercrime and its types, it is difficult for them to collect the evidences accordingly. Third section is of roles and responsibilities of digital forensics investigator. Fourth will be digital evidence and types. Fifth will be potential sources of digital evidence, meaning from where we can collect the evidence. If we are using laptop, hard disk, external drive, thumb drive, then from where we can collect what. So let's begin.
Section 1, Fundamentals of Digital Forensics. Computer forensics plays a key role in tracking, investigating and prosecuting cyber criminals. But first let us know what is forensic science. Forensic science helps in gathering and examining information about the incidents or crime which occurred in past in a way that it can be used in the court of law. Or you can say that forensic science converts past incidences into legal evidence through collection, investigation and analysis. Let's take one example. It is the case of a stolen laptop. A student's laptop is missing from his classroom. He reports it to the school authority and the authority calls in a forensic expert to solve the case. Now let's know the steps involved in forensic science investigation. First step is securing the scene. The forensic expert and campus security secure the classroom to ensure that no evidence is disturbed. We should always make sure that crime scene should never be touched upon in the absence of forensic expert. Second point is evidence collection. Evidence collection has further subpoints such as fingerprint dusting. Forensic scientist uses fingerprint powder to dust surfaces such as tables, chairs, doorknobs and windows etc. so that they can find several fingerprints on these type of objects. Second point is footprint analysis. Suppose a muddy footprint is found near the window. Then forensic expert takes photographs and makes the mold of the footprint. Third step is collection of hairs and fibers if any. Forensic scientist collects few hairs and fibers which were available on the desk and chair. Next point comes is evidence analysis. Under evidence analysis, first point is fingerprint analysis, as we have collected some fingerprints. These collected fingerprints are analyzed and compared to the suspect's fingerprints, or if forensic expert has any database of known prints. What happens is forensic experts do maintain database of known prints which may belong to suspects or cyber criminals. A match is found in this case with someone who already had a record within the school campus. Therefore, next point is footprint comparison. The mold of the footprint is compared to the shoes of the suspect. If you remember, we noticed one muddy footprint and the mold of that muddy footprint was created. Therefore, the mold of that footprint is compared to the shoes of the suspect. Now the pattern and size match process is done and it matches. Next point is DNA analysis. Because we had some fibers and hairs, so hairs are tested for DNA and DNA profile matches the suspect. Now next major point or step is reconstructing the crime. Based on the evidence, the forensic expert reconstructs the crime scene. He determines that the suspect entered through the window, leaving a muddy footprint and touching various surfaces, leaving fingerprints and hairs behind. Now finally comes reporting and testifying it. Forensic experts then writes a detailed report of his findings, and he may testify it in the court of law if necessary. If a victim decides to go in the court or decides to go legal. Now you may wonder what is the outcome of this forensic investigation. With the forensic evidence, which include fingerprints, footprint and DNA, the school authority is able to confront the suspect, who eventually confesses to taking the laptop, and laptop is recovered and returned to the student. This example illustrates how forensic experts use scientific methods to solve crime and provide crucial information in the investigation. So this was about the forensic science investigation steps. Now in the next topic we discuss what is digital forensics, and we will take one example of digital forensics. Digital forensics is the scientific process of preserving, collecting, recovering, documenting, examining and analyzing the digital evidence to support legal investigations so that it can be presented strongly in the court of law. Let's again take the example of a stolen laptop and see how digital forensics would be used to investigate and recover. Earlier we used forensics investigation. Now we understand the same case with the help of digital forensics investigation. This time, let's imagine laptop is stolen from your home and you want to track it down and find out who took it. Steps in digital forensics include, first one is identification. Look for relevant details such as model number of the stolen laptop, serial number of the laptop. These details are mostly available on the invoice, that is bill of your laptop. Note down the operating system which was installed in the laptop and other softwares which were installed, and details of user account, whatever user accounts you had on your laptop. Sometimes people do create user accounts by their name. Sometimes they do have only one administrative account. Sometimes one admin account, another is guest account. A user account is an account assigned to an individual user to access computer on any device. For example, there could be admin, there could be one user as guest, there could be one user as my name, say Priyanka. So we can have multiple or variety of rights as per the user requirement. For example, admin will have all the privileges, guest will have minimum privileges. I can have privileges as per my own requirement. Suppose we want to see how many user accounts are there within a system or computer, then we have to go to the command prompt, and on command prompt write the command wmic space user account space get space name and hit enter, and it will show you the name of the user accounts which exist on a particular system. Like on the screen you can see that there are 5 accounts. One is admin, another is default, like this. You make sure that on a paper or in a computer file you note down all these details which I mentioned. So this is the first step called as identification. What we are doing, we are identifying or we are noting the important details of the stolen object. Second point is evidence collection. Second step is collection of all the available data. Now you may ask how to collect the available data when laptop is stolen. So here are few sources from where we can collect some information. For example, tracking software. Some laptops have built-in tracking software that can send location data when the laptop connects to the internet, or maybe you yourself installed any tracking app in the past for security reasons. Second source can be cloud services. If you use Google Drive or Dropbox or iCloud for storing your documents, then you should note the login credentials and check if any file from the laptop was recently accessed or modified in the cloud storage services, whether it is Google Drive, Dropbox or any cloud service. Let's take the Google Drive example. Suppose I want to see whether somebody has accessed any file or folder recently in my Google Drive. So for this, I open my Google Drive. I type drive.google.com. As I type this, I see this screen and it shows me that there are some folders and like Cyber Pathshala India, then some MP4 files, some contact information form, then another form. It is showing me the owners, plus it shows me last modified date and time, file size. Somewhere file size is mentioned and at two places file size is not visible. But besides this, we see three dots. We have to click on these three dots. As we click on these three dots, we see this next screen. And now select any of the file or folder and you will see the properties of that particular file or folder. It is showing that two people have been given access of this, and these are the folder details. Type is Google Drive folder, location is my drive, owner is me. It was modified on 2nd of September 24 by who? By me. That means me means whosoever is the owner. If suppose it has been opened by someone else, it will show here the name or the computer name of that person or the name of that person. Then it was accessed, it was opened on November 10, 23. Then it was created on so and so date, and download permission, whether viewers can download this file or not. So these are the details which can be helpful in case of a evidence collection. Further, when we proceed, you type myaccount.google.com and go to this data and privacy link. As you go on data and privacy link, you see the following page. Under history settings, we see web and app activities. As we click on these web and app activities, it will show what was opened, whether I opened any YouTube page or I did any activity in the browser or whatever I have done. It will show me that. So just click over here and you can see the activity is done by. So how this can be useful? Suppose in this case of a stolen laptop, if somebody has accessed my Google account or opened any say browser or opened any video in the YouTube or opened any file or altered any information, so we can see these details by visiting the Google Drive. Next step could be checking of email accounts. Make sure to look for any recent login activity from the stolen laptop, if you can access email anyhow. Now you may ask, if laptop is stolen, then how to check email? Sometimes what happens is, we are using the common email on our mobile device, on iPads or even desktop or laptop. Email is common. So if laptop is stolen and you are using the same email which is configured in your mobile, then by going into the settings, you can see the recent login activity. Let's see the email activities. Open your Gmail account on any device, whether it is mobile or any computer, desktop, laptop, whatever. Scroll down up to the bottom and you will see last record activity. I have outlined this link in the red color. Click on the details option. As you click on the details option, you see this screen. It shows that this was accessed using Firefox browser. Using Firefox browser again, then authorized application, that means on some device where Gmail app has been installed, then on Firefox browser, mobile phone, then authorized app, and it is showing the location, that is IP address of the location along with the date and time. Now to see more details, we click on this show details option. As I click on show details option, I see this page. It is showing the details of the browser. It says that it was accessed on Firefox browser, Mozilla 5.0 version it is showing, Windows NT. Complete version has been written over there. And location along with the date and time has been given. So this is how we can see the last activity on the email account. And this can be used as evidence. Your email account was accessed from any other device, from any other location, it will give you the information about that. So make sure that you note down all these relevant details. After collecting this crucial information, third step is of preserving this data. So under preservation, you have to ensure that all the collected data or information is preserved in its original state. This includes saving log files, for example, Google Drive activity logs or any screenshots or any digital evidence. Whatever information you can save, just try to preserve that safely. Next important point is analysis of this information. Now we will examine this collected data to find clues about the laptop's whereabouts or identity of the thief. Next major step is analysis of this information. Now we will examine the collected data to find clues about the laptop's whereabouts or identity of the thief. Because we had some information about the laptop from our tracking software. So we will be analyzing the location data sent by the tracking software. For example, it might show that the laptop was last connected to the internet at a specific address. Maybe the tracking app shows that the laptop was connected to the internet in a nearby neighborhood. Maybe Google Drive logs show that a document was accessed from an IP address corresponding to the same location. Next was the cloud services activities. Check if there are any recent logins or file changes that could indicate the laptop's current user. For instance, if a document was edited yesterday, it might show the IP address of the device used. Next was the email account logs. After reviewing recent login activity, see if the thief has accessed your email. This might also show the IP address and location of the recent login activity. After this analysis, final step is reporting. You should compile a detailed report with all the findings, including last known location of the laptop, IP addresses and locations from cloud services or email logins, or any other relevant information that might help in identifying the thief or locating the laptop. Now the presentation. You have to present these findings to the relevant authorities, including police. This report will help them in their investigation and increase the chances of recovering your laptop. So what are the key points in digital forensics? We can say that digital footprint is one of the key points because the thief leave digital traces such as location data and IP addresses which can be tracked later on. Another is tools. We used certain tools such as tracking software and cloud services. These tools helped us in collecting and analyzing these digital footprints. Third one is the collaboration. Working with authorities increases the chances of recovering the stolen laptop. So this example shows how digital forensics can be used to trace and potentially recover a stolen laptop by following digital evidence and using it effectively in an investigation. Further, forensic investigator estimates the impact of malicious activity on the victim and assess the intent of the perpetrator. And investigator will also find vulnerabilities and security loopholes that helped or exploited by the cyber criminals. Investigator further understand the techniques used by attackers to avoid prosecution. They try to recover deleted files, hidden files and temporary data that can be used as evidence in the court of law. Now we talk about computer forensics. Digital is a broader term that encompasses all technology that uses digital data while computer specifically refers to a machine that processes data. A computer is always a digital device, but not all digital devices are computers. For example, a digital watch is not a computer, but it is a digital device. So, computer forensics is the scientific investigation of digital devices to collect, preserve, and present evidence for legal proceedings. It involves meticulously collecting, extracting, documenting, analyzing, and interpreting data from computers, networks, and storage media such as hard disks, pen drives, etc. By applying specialized techniques, forensic experts can reconstruct digital events to identify perpetrators and provide actionable intelligence to support legal actions. Now let's see what are the other branches of digital forensics. Computer forensics is one of the branch of digital forensics. Second is mobile device forensics, then network forensics, live forensics, database forensics, vehicle forensics, drone forensics, etc. I am not explaining these because it's the basic course. I am just giving you the touch of digital forensics. Let's see what are the objectives of computer forensics. Being a specialized field that involves the application of scientific techniques to recover and analyze data from computer systems and networks, its primary objectives are such as identification, collection, and preservation of evidence. Identify, collect, and preserve the evidence of cybercrime in forensically sound manner so that evidence maintains its integrity and admissibility in the court of law. It should not happen that we have identified and collected some evidence, but it is not admissible in the court of law, or it is difficult to prove that these evidences have been collected from the same device or the said device. Here forensically sound means evidence should be admissible in the court of law. Therefore, computer forensics involves extraction of meaningful information from the collected data to establish facts and timelines related to a cybercrime case. You can understand it like this: interpret, document, and present the evidence in such a manner so that it is admissible in the court of law. Computer forensics also involves documentation and reporting. Detailed records of the forensic process are maintained, including methodologies, findings, and conclusions. This document is crucial for legal proceedings. So these all are core objectives of computer forensics. There may be broader objectives as well, such as supporting the legal proceedings. Computer forensics provide necessary evidence to prosecute or defend legal cases involving cybercrime. But when we talk about the broader objective, it may be the investigation of cybercrime because it uncovers the perpetrators and their motives and methods of cyber attacks. It could be protection of intellectual property. It also involves identification and recovery of stolen or misused intellectual property. Then there could be incident response case. It involves analysis of any digital evidence to understand the nature and extent of any security breach incident. Broader objective could be like risk assessment. It involves identification of vulnerabilities within a system or systems and networks to prevent future incidents. Then there could be compliance. It ensures adherence to legal and regulatory requirements related to data handling and security. Though I have explained clearly both digital and computer forensics, but before we proceed further and discuss other branches, let's understand the difference in digital forensics and computer forensics more clearly. Topic is digital forensics versus computer forensics. Both digital forensics and computer forensics are subfields of forensic science. We have discussed earlier what is forensic science, what is digital forensics, and what is computer forensics. But now let's understand the difference in a better way. We will talk about the distinct applications of digital and computer forensics. First, we talk about the scope. Digital forensics refers to the broader area that involves recovery, analysis, and investigation of data from any digital device, which may be computers, mobile, networks, cloud storage, IoT devices, etc. Here, the term digital encompasses all forms of electronic data from any kind of device. While computer forensics is a subset of digital forensics that focuses specifically on computers and computer related activities. It involves the investigation of desktop, computers, laptops, servers, etc. If we talk about the application of these, then digital forensics covers a wide range of digital devices and media, of course, such as smartphones, tabs, USB drives, CDs, etc. Also, it includes cloud storage and social media platform. While computer forensics is more specialized, it focuses on retrieving and analyzing data from computers and computer networks. And it is often used in cases involving computer crimes such as hacking, cyber fraud, or unauthorized access to computer systems, etc. Mobile investigation is a subset of digital forensics, which also involves computer forensics. You may question, in general we are aware about cybercrime and types, so what is the need to study it as a part of forensic course curriculum? So answer is, a forensic investigator's role is to uncover the truth by examining digital evidence. Understanding cybercrime and its various forms is essential for several reasons, such as evidence recognition and collection. It involves identification of relevant data. If you do not have deep understanding of cybercrime tactics, then it may be difficult for you to recognize and understand what constitutes digital evidence and where digital evidence might be hidden. There are proper collection methods. So different types of cybercrimes necessitate different collection techniques to preserve the integrity of evidence. Second point is analysis and interpretation. It helps in understanding criminal behavior. Knowledge of patterns of cybercrime helps investigators in interpreting digital artifacts and reconstruction of the cybercrime incidents. It helps them further in connecting the dots. Sometimes evidence is not clear, and linking of seemingly unrelated pieces of digital evidence helps the investigator. Next point is legal and procedural knowledge. Here comes the admissibility of the evidence. Understanding the legal framework related to cybercrime ensures that collected evidence is admissible in the court of law, which is very crucial point. Then comes this, we should be updated about the cybercrime because it is constantly evolving. Therefore, investigators must keep pace with legal changes and new types of digital evidence. Further, if you know about the cybercrime and types, then you can take some steps to prevent and mitigate it. For example, you can identify vulnerabilities. Knowledge of cybercrime tactics helps in identifying potential vulnerabilities which are present in systems and networks. Or you may develop prevention strategies. Understanding how cybercrime occurs can help in the development of effective prevention measures. Further, you can be an witness to testimony. Credibility it ensures. A deep understanding of cybercrime enhances an investigator's credibility as an expert witness in the court of law. It will help you in establishing the clear-cut communication because explaining complex technical concepts to a non-technical audience requires a strong grasp of cybercrime technology and concepts. Therefore, it becomes important to know some common cybercrimes which occurs frequently. So, shall we proceed further? There are different types of cybercrimes which take place commonly, such as email hacking, website hacking, network hacking, phishing, smishing, malware attacks, ransomware attacks, and data breaches, etc. Digital forensic experts must understand how these different types of cybercrime impact individuals and organizations. But before we proceed, let us first understand what is cybercrime. Cybercrime is the unlawful use of technology, including computers, software, and network infrastructure, to commit crimes. These offenses are typically deliberate, and their nature and severity depends upon the targeted victim and the tools available to the offender. Or you can understand it like this, that cybercrime is an illegal act that involves use of digital devices such as computers, its parts or accessories, or its applications like say software or mobile app, etc. Cybercrime refers to the criminal activities carried out through digital devices targeting specific individuals or systems or organizations by utilizing technology for malicious purposes. Cybercrime is the illegal exploitation of digital systems for malicious purposes driven by targets and technological capabilities. Therefore, forensic investigators meticulously examine digital tools and infrastructure involved in a cybercrime. Relevant items are seized as evidence to support the investigation. The target of the cybercrime means victim. It can be an individual, corporate house, or any organization, or any website, any consulting agency, or even a government organization. Cyber criminals target computer systems and networks to get unauthorized and unlawful access, or to steal, or to alter, or to erase data. These attacks can originate from within the organization or from the outside of the organization. If the attack is originating from the organization, meaning within the organization, then it is called as insider threat. If it is originating from the external sources, then it comes under outsider threats. First, we talk about insider cyber attacks or cyber threats. These insider cyber threats pose a significant risk because current or former disgruntled employees, contractors, or business partners can exploit authorized access to compromise the systems and data of the target organization. Employees or third-party vendors' deeper knowledge of the internal operations sometimes may prove fatal and makes detection challenging. Insider attacks can occur as data breach, espionage, intellectual property theft, data alteration, and installation of malware, etc. Let's take one example of Chelsea Manning. It is available on internet. You may Google it. What happened is, as per Wikipedia and other internet sources, Chelsea Manning, a US Army intelligence analyst, accessed and leaked a vast amount of classified military and diplomatic documents to WikiLeaks somewhere in 2010. Now let's understand the impact of this incident. It is being said that leaked documents included sensitive information about the Iraq and Afghanistan wars and US diplomatic communications, leading to global political repercussions. What is the lesson that can be learned from these incidents? These incidents highlights how important it is to keep an eye on sensitive information and manage who can access it, even if they are supposed to be the authorized users. So this is the example of insider threat. Now we move to external attacks or external threats. These external attacks originate from malicious threat actors who can be individuals or groups outside any organization. These cyber criminals exploit system vulnerabilities or deceive users using social engineering tactics to infiltrate within the network and steal sensitive information. Driven by financial incentives or a desire to take revenge or espionage, cyber criminals can inflict substantial harm. Common attack methods include malware attack, ransomware attack, phishing, social engineering attacks, SQL injection attacks, cross-site scripting attacks, IoT attacks, zero-day exploits, brute force attack, dictionary attack, identity theft, denial of service, and cyber defamation, etc. These attacks can result in devastating consequences such as data breaches, financial losses, reputational damage, operational disruptions, and finally, legal complications. To understand it more clearly, we take the example of Stuxnet. Stuxnet is highly sophisticated computer worm that specifically targeted Iran's nuclear facilities. You can Google about it and you will find lots of information on this case. Stuxnet was designed to damage centrifuges used in uranium enrichment by causing them to spin out of control while simultaneously providing false feedback to monitoring system. So its impact was very dangerous. Stuxnet caused significant physical damage to Iran's nuclear program, delaying its progress, and it was a landmark cyber attack because it demonstrated how a malware could cause physical damage to real-world industrial system. And lesson learned is that cyber attack can extend beyond data theft or data breach to physical damage, illustrating the importance of cybersecurity in critical infrastructure. There could be many more examples related to cyber crimes. I state few for your better understanding. To effectively investigate cybercrimes, forensic investigators should be familiar with at least with these following categories. For example, cyber theft. It may include identity theft, financial frauds, data thefts, intellectual property theft, etc. Then comes cyber vandalism. It may include website defacements, DOS attacks, data destruction, etc. Then cyber espionage, meaning unauthorized access to sensitive information for competitive advantage or nation's security purposes. Then comes cyber terrorism, using computers to intimidate or coerce a government or civilian population. And very heinous crime is online child exploitation. It includes child grooming, cyberbullying, even child pornography. So by understanding the intricacies of cybercrime, forensic investigators can play a very crucial role in combating these cyber threats and bringing perpetrators to justice. For example, say malware attack. So malware attack may include any ransomware attack, any spyware attack, or even a adware attack. So ransomware is a top cyber threat. It encrypts systems and demands a ransom amount for decryption. And spyware steals sensitive information without users' knowledge. If we talk about adware, it displays unwanted ads on the devices. Phishing and social engineering is also commonly occurring. Phishing is a technique used to deceive users into revealing personal information through fraudulent emails or through fraudulent websites. And spear phishing is a type of phishing attack that targets a specific individual, group, or even organization. Spear phishing is highly personalized and it relies on detailed information about the target to increase its effectiveness. I have made one YouTube video on Cyber Pathshala India YouTube channel which explains in detail about the phishing attacks, and I have explained the phishing attacks along with examples. So you may see that also if you are looking for more detailed information. Then password attacks. For example, brute force attacks. Here attackers try countless password combinations, and in dictionary attacks, common words or phrases are tried as passwords. Another common type of methodology adopted by cyber criminals is DOS or DDoS attacks. DOS and DDoS attack overwhelms a system or network with massive traffic, making it inaccessible. Denial of service meaning DOS and distributed denial of service meaning DDoS. Both attacks overwhelms the target system with massive traffic and render it to inaccessible to legitimate users. These attacks flood the system with excessive requests, and attackers effectively shut down its operations, cause disruptions, and potential financial losses. Web attacks, defacing of the website is very common. Then SQL injection is also part of web attack. It exploits vulnerabilities which are present in any web application to access or manipulate data. Then cross-site scripting, also a kind of web attack. It includes injecting any malicious code into the website. There are some other common threats as well, like say insider attacks, zero-day exploits, supply chain attacks, and IoT attacks, cryptojacking, then cyber defamation. Cyber defamation is the malicious use of digital platform to damage an individual or organization's reputation. It involves disseminating false or harmful information through channels such as social media or even email. For example, sending any defamatory email or posting any defamatory statement on social media to damage the reputation of someone. Then cyber terrorism, as we discussed earlier, it involves illegal use of digital devices to intimidate or coerce government or even civilians for potential political gain or social objectives. Cyber warfare, it is an attack against an enemy state causing harm and disrupting their critical computer systems. Espionage is stealing sensitive information. It also poses a significant threat to organizations because competitors frequently seek to obtain sensitive data through open source intelligence gathering. And by leveraging this open source information, competitors can launch similar products, adjust prices, and ultimately weaken the market position of the target organization. And then there could be propaganda to spread any misinformation, or there could be some manipulation attack by influencing public opinion. It is mostly used during election times. There could be economic warfare to target financial systems or supply chains. Then there could be some privilege escalation attacks. Privileges are security roles assigned to users of specific programs, features, or even say operating systems, functions, files, codes, etc. to limit access based on the user type. It occurs when a cyber attacker initially granted limited access to a system exploits vulnerabilities to gain higher level privileges. It can allow them to bypass security controls and perform actions which are restricted only for the authorized users, and it potentially lead to catastrophic consequences. Now we talk about the impact of these cyber crimes at the level of organization. Number one is financial loss. For any organization is a big loss. There could be direct theft of funds or sensitive information. There may be some cost may incur related to incident response, legal fees, and regulatory fines. There may be decreased revenue due to disruption of services or loss of businesses. There could be reputational damage, for example, loss of customer trust and loyalty, negative media coverage, long-term impact on brand value and market position. There could be operational disruption, say downtime affecting business operations and productivity. It may compromise systems, which may further lead to delays and inefficiencies. It can incur further increased cost for system restoration and upgrades. There could be some legal and regulatory consequences, say for example non-compliance with data protection laws resulting in fines. There may be litigation cost from affected customers or partners. There can be obligations to notify stakeholders and regulators. There may be a loss of intellectual property, for example, theft of trade secrets or proprietary information, or competitive disadvantage from leaked product design or strategies. There could be loss of innovation edge and potential revenue from new products. Further, it may lead to loss of employee morale and retention, stress and uncertainty among employees, increased workload due to recovery efforts, or even uh, very high leftover rates if employees feel insecure or say overburdened. Similarly, there can be serious impacts of cybercrimes at the level of individual. Financial impact like direct theft from bank account or say credit card fraud. There could be cost associated while recovering the identity theft. There could be potential loss of employment if individual's workplace is compromised. And of course, there is a privacy invasion, maybe due to unauthorized access to personal information, maybe exposure of private communications and activities, maybe there is a risk of sensitive data being sold or used maliciously. There could be emotional and psychological effects, stress and anxiety related to personal data breaches or feeling of mistrust in digital services, or there could be potential trauma from cyber stalking or harassment. If we talk about identity theft, then fraudulent use of personal information to open bank accounts or email IDs or to commit crime. Even identity theft can lead to long term consequences on credit score and financial stability. There could be loss of personal data, and it could be permanent, such as photographs and documents. And further, it impacts the daily life of the person, of the victim, because it disrupts the regular online activities and services. Then what is the roles and responsibilities of forensic investigator? Now we talk about that. After understanding various kind of cyber crimes which are occurring commonly, now we understand what are the roles and responsibilities of forensics investigator. Forensics investigator helps organizations and law enforcement agencies in identifying, investigating, and prosecuting the offenders. Upon arrival on the crime scene, investigator inspects the suspect's systems, devices, extracts and collects data of evidentiary value, and analyzes it with the appropriate set of forensics tools so that he can determine the root cause of the cybersecurity incident or cybercrime. Therefore, forensic investigators are essential for our society because they can help and provide crucial evidence in legal proceedings. They play a vital role in solving cybercrime. How? By analyzing evidence, they can help the organization and law enforcement agencies to identify crime suspects, to establish timelines, even to reconstruct the crime scenes, and finally in prosecuting the perpetrators of cybercrimes. Forensic investigators handles the evidence in a forensically sound manner, because if a technically inexperienced person examines the forensic evidence, it might become inadmissible in the court of law. Forensic investigator can identify the crime patterns easily. By analyzing multiple cases, forensic investigators can help in identifying common trends in criminal activities. They can help in convicting the guilty because their findings can be used to prepare a strong legal case against criminals, which further may lead to convictions. Finally, their role is very crucial in incident handling and response. They can help organizations in maintaining forensics readiness and implement effective incident handling and response. Therefore, we can say that there are multiple and variety of roles and responsibilities of a digital forensics investigator. If we have to list certain tasks, then we can say that he evaluates the damages of a security breach, He identifies and recovers data which is required for investigation. He extracts the evidence in a forensically sound manner. He ensures appropriate handling of the evidence. He acts as a guide to the investigation team. He creates reports and documents about the investigation for presenting it in a court of law. He reconstructs the damaged storage devices and uncovers the information hidden on the computers. He informs the organizations about various methods of cyber attacks, data recovery techniques, and maintains a regularly updated record of those by using the relevant document methods. He may further addresses the issues in the court of law and attempts to win the case by testifying it. Therefore, it is said that computer forensic investigator or digital forensic investigator should be well versed in more than one computer platform, including Windows, Mac, and Linux. He must have wonderful interviewing skills to collect extensive information about the case from the client or from the victim, witnesses, and suspects. He should have excellent researching skills so that he can understand the background and activities pertaining to the client or to the victim, witness, and suspects. Further, investigators should be able to maintain perfect accuracy of the test performed and their records. He should have excellent writing skills so that he can write detailed findings in the report. He must possess strong analytical skills to find the evidence and link it to the suspect. He should remain updated about the new methodologies and forensic technologies, be it hardware, be it software. He must be honest, ethical, and law-abiding person. Next important section is digital evidence. Digital evidence is the information stored or transmitted electronically that can be used to prove a fact in legal proceedings is called as digital evidence. It encompasses data from computers, servers, networks, and other digital devices. Evidence such as login details, timestamps, IP addresses, and file content is crucial for investigating cybercrimes. Extracting and preserving digital evidence requires specialized digital forensic skills and tools because digital evidence is volatile in nature and can be altered very easily. Therefore, digital forensic investigators meticulously collect, analyze, and interpret digital evidence to identify offenders and reconstruct cyber attack incident. Because of the challenges involved in handling digital evidence, highly trained digital forensic professionals are required so that they can navigate complex digital environment and adhere to strict evidentiary standards. Digital evidence should be acquired and examined in a forensically sound manner during investigation of cybercrime. Digital evidence includes all the information that is either stored or transmitted digitally and has probative value. Therefore, it helps investigators in finding the cyber attackers. Evidence can be found across variety of computing devices, servers, network infrastructures, say routers, etc. During investigation or at the time of examining digital storage media or even monitoring the network traffic or making duplicate copies of digital data, investigators should take utmost care because this digital evidence is fragile in nature, and due to its fragile nature, it is difficult for a forensic investigator to trace criminal activities. According to Locard's exchange principle, Locard meaning Dr. Edmund Locard, he was a pioneer in forensic science. So as per Locard's exchange principle, anyone or anything entering a crime scene takes something from the scene with them and leaves something of themselves behind when they leave. Locard formulated the basic principle of forensic science. He says that every contact leaves a trace. It is generally understood as contact between two items. There will be an exchange, or we can understand it like this, that the perpetrator of a crime will bring something to the crime scene and he will leave something from it. For example, homicide case. The offender attempts to misdirect investigators by creating a suicide note on victim's computer and leaving his fingerprints on the keyboard. Investigators can recover crucial digital evidence from various sources. It may be from victim's computer, maybe it contains some valuable information which are stored in log files and browsing history. Additionally, evidence can be found on cloud-based services as we discussed in the section 1. Cloud-based services are used for communication, say like email or for storage, or further it can provide investigators more useful information such as metadata, content and other relevant data. It may be from sender and from the recipient. After understanding digital evidence, we talk about types of digital evidence. As we know now that cybercrime always have some kind of evidence and cyber criminals leave digital traces. So evidence is primarily found on the devices used by the attacker and the victim. And it can be of any type. For example, file stored on a device. It can be text file, image, document, executable file or even application data. So based on the storage device and its lifespan, digital evidence is categorized into two types, that is volatile data and non-volatile data. What is volatile data? Volatile data is temporary but very important for digital investigations, and it is highly susceptible to loss. This resides in temporary memory, that is RAM, and vanishes once device is turned off or crashes. So it is dependent on a constant power supply. Once power supply is interrupted, it is gone. This may include critical data such as system time, active users and open applications. So capturing information such as system time, user activity and the files which were opened is essential for understanding a system's state at a specific moment and a specific time. Example of volatile data includes not only the system time or logged on users or say open applications, but it includes open files, process information, driver information, command history, network activity, etc. Further, it includes process to port mapping, process memory, clipboard contents, service or say driver information, etc. Next is the non-volatile data. It resides on storage devices such as hard disk and memory cards, and it is unaffected by power loss. Volatile data vanishes as power is cut, but non-volatile data remains even after power loss or power is cut. This may include hidden files, slack space, registry settings, unallocated clusters, hidden partitions, event logs, and even other remnants that can be valuable for forensic investigator or say forensic analysis. So digital evidence is an indispensable tool in modern investigation. Now let's have a look on some examples of how it can assist in both prosecution and defense. First, we talk about how digital evidence can help in prosecution. Suppose there is a cybercrime incident and it has some identity theft case. Digital evidence can link a suspect to stolen identities, financial transactions, and online activities associated with the victim. The suspect might have stored the victim's personal information such as their bank details, email details, or addresses on their computer or smartphone. So when the police search the suspect's device, they may find this information saved there, and this link the suspect to the stolen identity. Further, there could be incidents of say cyber stalking. So investigators may find emails, social media messages on suspect's device, and their IP addresses can be used to prove harassment and threats. Likewise, child exploitation crime. Digital images and videos can be traced back to the suspect's device, providing crucial evidence. Then there are some violent crimes, say for example homicide. So digital evidence can identify a suspect at a crime scene. In this case, his cell phone data, his GPS, his social media post can be extremely helpful information for investigator. Likewise, for say sexual assault case, text messages, emails, online search history can corroborate a victim's account or identify a suspect. Further, these evidences are helpful in investigating a white collar crime, say fraud. It can trace financial transactions, emails, and documents related to fraudulent schemes, or even say embezzlement. Computer records can show how unauthorized access to financial systems can transfer the funds. Now let's understand how digital evidence help in defending an innocent person. Yes, digital evidence like GPS data, cell phone records, media posts, this can prove a suspect's whereabouts at the time of crime. There can be surveillance footage that can support or confirm a suspect's presence. There could be one challenging witness testimony, say for example video recording or any online message that can show that witness is speaking lie, witness's story is not true. For example, if witness says he saw something happen at certain time, but video footage or online message shows something different, then investigator can prove that the witness's statement is wrong. Now we proceed towards next section, that is sources of potential evidence. Now we proceed towards next section, that is sources of potential evidence. It's a very important section, so let us understand from where we can collect digital evidence. Yes, investigators can collect digital evidence from multiple sources. Apart from standalone computing systems, digital evidence can be acquired from storage, peripheral and network, and say even handheld devices that may be found on crime scene. Once identified, these potential sources of evidence should be acquired in a forensically sound manner to preserve their integrity, as we discussed what is forensically sound manner. Investigators should use valid and reliable forensic tools and techniques while acquiring digital evidence to prevent data alterations or modifications. So here are some listed sources of potential evidence that record user activities and can provide useful information during forensic investigation. I am listing the location from where evidence can be available. If you are interested, you can drop a mail to me so that some more detailed program about this forensic investigation or digital forensics can be created where you can learn more. So first we talk about user created files. You can look for say address books, database files, media such as images, audios and video files. You can look for documents such as text messages, say spreadsheets, presentations, etc. You can look for internet bookmarks and favorites in the browser. So these are the location where you can look for evidences. For example, you may find some bookmark in the browser of the victim or browser of the suspect's device, and it may give you some clue. Likewise, you may find some audio, video or any image in the suspect's or the victim's device, or you may find some important phone number or any message in the address book. Likewise, there are some user protected files. These are compressed files. These may be the misnamed file. Maybe somebody has stored some important people's name in one folder or in one file, but he has named it some very different name he has given. Or there may be some encrypted files, there may be some password protected files, there may be some hidden files, or even sometimes there may be a use of steganography. Steganography is the practice of hiding a secret message or file or any information within another medium. It may be image, audio, video or even text in such a way that the presence of hidden content is not apparent to the observer. You may see that there is some funny video which is being sent across multiple devices, but behind that video there may be some hidden message for any intended person, or there may be some hidden file which may contain some malware which may you know distribute the malware among the people. There could be n number of things, but steganography is different from cryptography. Don't be confused. Cryptography makes the content of the message unreadable without a key, while steganography aims to make the existence of the message itself undetectable. Now there could be some computer created files. Computer created files are not created by the user. These files are created on its own. Say it could be backup file, it could be log file, configuration files, or some printer spooling files, some cookies, swap files, system files, history files, temporary files, etc. Where I have mentioned clearly that if you have a hard drive, then what you can look for within the hard drive. If it is a thumb drive, what you can look for. If it is a memory card, then what you can look for. If it is a biometric scanner, then you can look for some evidence. Or if it is a digital or surveillance camera, then what you can look for, what you can find. So go through this table and it will help you.